Oh hey, I didn't see you there. Just posting some Facebook stuffs. Alright, cool. So welcome to Unity. I'm going to actually try to do a quick walkthrough. Basically what we're doing is a portal clone. The idea is that you can shoot out, pew pew. You can walk up to your portal and jump in and hey, look, I teleported. It's pretty buggy, but it's to get you used to Unity and make you feel powerful. So let's go ahead and jump out of this. I'm going to create a new scene, delete everything, and we're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to close out my code. If you haven't used Unity, this is going to be very fast. It's not going to be making a whole lot of sense. I'm going to try to skip over explaining things just to get you in here so that you can start messing around with things and feel like you know what you're doing. First things first, what we want to do is create an object. This is going to just be our floor, and let's go and name it floor. Now this is interesting over here. This is called an inspector. You can see we got the floor highlighted here, and it's visible in the scene view and the game view. Game view right here is used to test what's in game. You see what the main camera shows you. Oh look, a main camera. Wait a minute, where is it? I see the boxes of it. Well, if you hover over in the scene area and hit F while you have this main camera selected, it'll help you focus on the object. Same thing with this floor item. Now it does scale to size, so we want to make this cube, well actually floor shaped. So if you hit the R button, oh wow, that changes. If you hit W, you can move the object around, either by a single axis or you can just grab it in the middle. If you hit, oh, that's T. If you hit R, you can change the size. Notice how in the inspector as well it's changing. That's going to make it, well, a lot more accurate. We don't need accuracy, but we'll go ahead and do it here because it's easier. It's less scrolling I got to do. Now notice that I'm able to move around this pretty quick. What I'm doing is I'm scrolling in and out with the mouse wheel. I'm right-clicking to rotate and look around in the scene. And I'm hitting the scroll wheel down, hitting that button down so I can pan. Alright, cool, this is nice, but it also looks pretty ugly. So let's go and create something called a material. Let's call it floor. Let's give it, we'll just give it like a boring gray. But hey, the floor's still not changed. Hold on real quick, I'm getting ahead of myself. Go to the floor, you'll see it's got this material that's called a default material. Grab this new material we made, click and drag. Hey, it changed. Now notice, we can drop this down. Oh, we can change the values, we can make it darker. There you go, a little maroon color. You can change values like metallic. It's really, really complex. You can get super in-depth. We're just going to leave it on standard. Notice how those changes now affect this over here. It's got this new darker color. So let's go ahead and save the scene. A scene is basically a level. What we do is we're going to hit save. Let's call this portal scene. Hey, in this project tab, a new scene popped up. It's got that little Unity cube there, or the arrows. What we want to do is we want to organize things. This won't be too complicated, there won't be too many things, but your games can quickly spiral out of control, so it's good to early on establish things for like scenes, scripts. Let's go and even make a material folder. I don't want that nested. Cool. Nice and clean. Cool. So what we need next is something that Unity provides. Unity gives you a whole lot of assets that are free and come with it. Also, people develop it online, either for free or for pretty cheap. So let's go up to Assets, Import Package, Characters. This is going to give us these different packages for third-person control characters, first-person control characters, different types of movement scripts. This will make it easier, though you'll probably need to end up making your own custom versions for whatever game you create. This is particularly powerful if you just want to prototype something or if you just want to experiment with an idea. There's a lot that hasn't been done with games yet, so just download Unity, it's free, slap some stuff together, have fun, man. Or woman. Takes a little while to download, also streaming makes it a little bit less fast. There's also a lot more in-depth tutorials that will take you through each individual component. I'm trying to get you up and running quick and dirty here so that you can have a little bit of fun with it. Alright, so you see that we've now got some new things that have been added. The standard assets folder, this editor folder. Ignore the editor folder. Under standard assets, go to characters, first person character, prefabs. Prefabs are game objects, like this cube that we made. Although if you click and drag it over here, it creates what's called a prefab. See this blue cube next to it? A prefab is lighter on memory load and it's just easier to use. So let's go ahead and grab our FPS controller. right here in this game object, and we can just click and drag it and pop it into here. Hey, I notice our camera's kind of done something funky. I'll go and delete that again. Oh, wait a minute. What's going on here? Well, what's happening is that this FPS controller actually has a camera itself attached to it. And we want to use that because we want that first person perspective, right? So go to your main camera, delete that. Let's grab our FPS controller, F, zoom in. All right, cool. So we can move it about, although it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot to it to move. That's true. That's certainly true, but if we expand this character controller thing, we see this green cage around it in a capsule shape. That's your character. That's the object that is going to be colliding with things, and we see that the camera's attached to it. So it's invisible because they didn't want to bother animating a 3D object. But again, it's a nice, cheap, and easy way to be able to simulate collisions without having to make everything. And we do that primarily through something called a rigid body. This rigid body object gives you physics. Unity's built in a bunch of physics, and you don't have to worry about calculating that yourself. All right, well, we got a floor, and that's all well and good, but let's go and create a little obstacle here. This is portal, after all. We need to be able to get around. So let's make a new cube. Remember, hit R to resize it, and we mostly want this guy to be tall, and maybe a little bit wide. Oh, and you know what? It's going, we'll make it very long. Alright, so now you have this object. If we hit play, hey, look at that. We've got character controls, we're moving around, we're jumping. What if we, boom. Alright, well, we're walking into that. We can't move. Now if you hit escape, while you're in the play mode here, you can actually mess around with the controls. So we can click on our first person character. Oh, we can see everything going on in the scene. You can also, with this script attached, change things like the walking speed. We could even increase the jump. So we could probably increase this so we could just jump over our obstacle here. Woo. Yep, now we're on top. And so, but we don't want that, right? We got a puzzle game that we're trying to make. So hit escape. Stop the play. And look, these values changed. So what happens is, whenever you're in the play mode, any change in value in the inspector does not get saved. This is useful because it means you don't break your game right away, but it also means that if you're trying to experiment with values, before you exit the play mode, write that down so you don't lose it. Cool. Well, now we need to actually do some things with portal. First of all, though, let's call this ledge that we're trying to get on, and create 3D object cube. We're going to make this the overhang, because what we're going to do is we're going to shoot a portal onto the overhang, walk into our entrance one, pop out the overhang, land on our ledge. So overhang. Make this like 5 high, 25 wide, nope. Too deep. Too deep, 5 me, 15 wide. Alright, cool. Whoop. So we can see it's here, we can move it about, we want it to overhang. And then let's rotate it, right? Because we want it to be like plop you right onto there. So you hit E, and that's how you rotate things. And you can see, again, in the transform, that's changing. So, playtest, playtest, playtest. I'm making this take a little bit longer than it needs to, but hey, looky there. We can see that we got our ledge. That's the target. So remember how I said that there's components? We got a script here. Well, you're not limited to just one script. You can add as many as you want. And we're going to do that right now. Let's add a new script. We're going to call it portal script. Double click on this. Unity comes with something called MonoDevelop. It's what it uses for its editor. You can also use Visual Studio. You can use any IDE that you really want, but this is just what comes packaged and is what you're probably going to see. Okay, we don't have a whole lot, but we got a script called portal script. What we're going to do is we want to grab a couple variables. What we want is we want our camera, because we're going to shoot a ray out of it. We want our in portal and we want our out portal, because we want to be able to make the in portal appear where we want and the out portal appear where we want. So what we can do is we can say public camera. We'll call it ray camera, because remember we're shooting a ray, and you're going to see what rays are in a bit. Public game object, kind of similar to that prefab we made of the floor and of the first-person character controller. That's a game object, so we could use something like that. I'm just going to call this portal in. Same thing here. Public game object portal out. All right. Well, we don't have those objects. But notice here, in a second, once it kind of takes hold, we've got these new areas in our script. This is why it's useful to declare public variables so that we can test things out, swap them in and out, and kind of manage things in the inspector. It's a little bit easier than going and having to dig through code. Because believe me, once you got a couple thousand lines of this, you don't want to go digging through it. Alright, so what we need are our portals. So let's create a new 3D object, a capsule. Alright. So let's go ahead and flatten this guy, hit R. Whoop. And you can see it's really tiny there. I'm just going to put it in front of the player thing so we can see it. Let's go and make it like maybe a little bit taller, a little bit wider. Up. Now notice it's got this big green cage around it, like how our character did. That's called its collider. And a collider lets us simulate the physics, but it also lets us, or a collider lets us detect physics, this capsule collider here. The physics that are actually manipulated with Unity are the rigid body, but the collider, this capsule collider lets us know, hey, there has been contact. We're actually going to do something called is trigger. We're going to make this a trigger right now. And you know what? It's hard to see these things, so let's create some new materials. Material, red. Red. Overhang. Ledge, they're not red. Let's make a create material blue. This will be our in portal, so the first one that we shoot. Maybe a little bit lighter. It's almost springtime, you can believe. Let's rename this portal in. Alright, so it's got this trigger. Hit Control D whenever you click on this, and that duplicates it. We'll just make a portal out. Move it over, and we'll make this next one orange. So we don't want to be original here. Got to keep it as close to the classic as possible. Portal out. Cool. We have our two portals. Again, remember, capsule collider is trigger. We're going to turn the orange one off real quick for the is trigger. Notice what happens whenever we do that. We walk forward. I can walk straight through the blue one, but our yellow-orange one, I can't. You notice I'm not necessarily making collision with the actual part that we see. That's because there's a difference between what is kind of physically existing, that collider, and what we see. We changed the renderer, the transform of it to be smaller, but the collider is still the same. Cool. So we've got that. Let's turn it into a trigger again. That's going to be important later. Jump into the script. First thing first, though, we don't need these things visible until we shoot them out. So let's go ahead and say portal in, because remember, we made that variable, that portal in variable, that's set active, false, portal out, that's set active, false. Play test. Every time you add some script, play test, because once you've added 5 things, it's a lot harder to pinpoint what exactly went wrong. Speaking of going wrong, console down here, you don't normally get this in your view. You can access that by going to window, all the way down here, hit console. Console will let us know if there's any bugs. You can also have it print out specific stuff to help you track down these bugs. Alright. What did I do wrong? Oh, I know what I did. I never actually assigned it. So we said, hey, set portal in and out to false. But the problem is that we never actually assigned it here. So Unity is saying, hey man, I'd love to help, but help me help you. So also remember, this is a camera right now that's attached to our player object. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we're assigning that to the spot that it needs to be in. So you just grab that and assign it there. We'll save. Let's play test again, see what happens. Oh look, they disappeared. Perfect. Alright. Step 1 down. Alright, now we're in something called update. Update runs, as it says here in this handy dandy comment, once per frame. And if you want a line of code to exist that doesn't actually throw you an error, you put 2 backslashes in front of it for C#. If we put that there, Unity's not going to like us. And down here, let's see, look, it says line 19 and 20. Oh no. So if we delete that, it's fixed. So update runs once per frame. That's important because it's going to be running a whole bunch. You sometimes between 30 to 60 frames per second, depending on your build. So this can affect a lot of things. If you're doing too many calculations at once, it'll bog down your system. What we want to do though is listen for a mouse input. We want to listen constantly right now because I want to show you something, but we actually will only want that to listen for a short moment. So get mouse button, if I'm holding down the button, it will constantly be running. If you have get mouse button down, it only runs once. As soon as it goes down, it just runs it that once. But what we need to do for this, though, is we need to create what's called a raycast. And a raycast is going to shoot out a ray from wherever we say, a certain distance, and it will return data based on what it collides with. So this is particularly useful for shooters, or first-person shooter like Portal, where I need to detect what am I hitting if I'm straight ahead and I hit the mouse button. It's also what's called hit scan weapons in a first-person shooter. That means that there's no simulation of bullets traveling through the air, it's just immediate. I hit the button, the mouse button down. If you are in my crosshairs, it assigns a hit. That's a Call of Duty uses hit scan weapons. Whereas I think Battlefield uses actual physics with the bullets. Vector 3. So we're basically creating a variable called hits. We want to say shoot ray. We're creating a vector 3. Remember, according to our good friend Vector in Despicable Me, a vector is both a position, a direction, and a velocity. So what we're saying is in a 3D space, we want to have these different points. We want a vector. So we're getting our camera, that ray camera, we're getting its transform, and remember, if you click on an object, you can see the transform up here. It's got position, rotation, scale. We're getting its transform, and we're going to get its direction. So, vector 3.4, and we will cover what all this means in some other video. Cyan. Cool. So if we're pushing down the mouse button, we're going to draw a pew lines. Hey, look, we can see that. Let's actually make it. You can see this is coming from our character. Wherever we're looking, it's shooting at this line, and you can see it's intersecting with things. What we can do then is we can make a call out that grabs what it's hitting. Say, hey, what's this position in space, or what is this object that I'm hitting? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a ray. I know this is confusing. We just drew a ray there. What we're doing is we're actually creating the ray so we can grab the data from it. So transform.position. You'll notice I'm not specifying what transform. That's because the script is attached to our player, and it will defaultly grab the nearest transform, which is what it's attached to. Change the position. And then shooty ray. Cool. So now we've got another check. If physics.raycast ray, and we're going to get an output of the hit. If hit.rigid body does not equal nothing. So remember I said rigid body is useful for simulating the physics? We're actually just using that as a way to differentiate. It's not necessarily the most effective thing, but it's kind of a quick and dirty solution. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying if we hit something, does it have a rigid body? If it does, then we're going to, if its rigid body is not equal to nothing, so that's what the exclamation equals means, not equal to, null, which is just nothing, then we're going to grab the portal and object, we're going to put its position wherever we hit, and we're going to set it active so it appears. Now here's a problem though. You can probably look at our ledge and our overhang right now, and they don't have any rigid bodies, so nothing's going to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to add component, and you can just type in and search rigid body. There's a difference between rigid body and rigid body 2D. And we don't need this to move, right? We don't actually want to simulate really much physics. We're just using this to differentiate. So add constraints so that these things don't move. Do the same thing with your overhang. Add the constraints. We don't want this to move. No gravity. So now, notice our floor does not have a rigid body. Hey! So we can click and it appears. It moves around. But if we click at the floor, we're making contact, but nothing's appearing. That's because the floor doesn't have the rigid body. So let's change a few things to clean this up. Let's add down after the get mouse button so it only occurs once. And let's match the rotation because as you saw earlier, whenever we hit that overhang, it would kind of be, overhangs angle, this kind of disappears inside of it. So let's make the portal in that transform dot rotation equal the hit object and its rotation. This isn't the cleanest way to do it. There's definitely ways that it can still be bugged up, but you'll see. Hey, look, it matches the angle. It's a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to see. All right, well now we need to do the same thing with our right click for the portal out. So what we can do actually is we'll just save ourselves a whole bunch of a headache. Copy this, paste. Now we set mouse button 0 before, that references the left click, 1 references right click. We always start at 0 with computers. Don't forget that. That'll help you with things like lists, dictionaries, and just moving on in the future. We don't want our portal in, we want our portal out. So be sure to change that. Portal out. Portal out. Boom, boom. Hey, look, we hit that. Cool, so these things move about, they match the rotation, they don't go on the ground. So now we need some actual behavior whenever we hit them. Remember I said update is called once every frame? Maybe we don't want to call something once every frame. Maybe if we only perhaps hit a trigger. So what we do is we have this function that Unity's already created called onTriggerEnter. You give it a collider, U, and then the collide called, as I'm calling it. So this is pretty simple. Basically all we want to do is if call the collide E, if its GameObject.name is equal to portal in, right? Because that's what we call it over here, right? Portal in. So we're grabbing this game object, we're saying, hey, what's your name, buddy? You're portal in, you're good by me. I also want to check and make sure that our portal out has actually been cast. So if we don't have an out portal, we're not going to try to appear at it, because otherwise we'll probably get an error. Active self, that just returns, hey, is this active? It's called a Boolean, which is just true or false. If that's active, then we're going to grab our transform, our position, and it's going to equal, remember the double equals is if you want to compare two variables, 1 equals if you want to assign it. So we're going to grab the portal out, transform.position. You know what, let's go ahead and add a little bit of space so we kind of appear in front of them. So let's grab this transform.forward times 5. Let's see how far that spits us out in front. Boom, boom. Oh, might be too high for me. Hey, looks like we appeared. I know that's a very basic Unity tutorial on how to make a portal clone. There's so much more I'd love to go over with you guys. We'll go over that at another time. Thank you for watching. Catch you later.